Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ruby, this is Ruby Red, and today I want to talk to you about my experience doing the 75 Hard Reading Challenge. This challenge was created by Alyssa from Nerdy Nurse Reads, and I'm going to link her announcement video down below. But basically, it's a spin-off challenge of the 75 Hard Challenge that you often see cropping up online, especially in the new year. Which is very intense, like transformative, life-changing, potentially challenge that I personally will probably absolutely never do. But the 75 Hard Reading Challenge takes the same idea and makes it just more about reading. But the general idea is just that you have a set amount of time that you need to spend doing specific things every single day for 75 days in a row. That's the challenge. So for the reading challenge, there are 3 challenges laid out by Alyssa in her video, and I think you could take or leave those. You could modify this challenge to suit your personal needs as far as reading goes, or like lifestyle, whatever you want. But I'm talking about what I did. So what I did was 30 minutes of reading an ARC. So I have a lot of advanced reader copies that I received from NetGalley that I just don't prioritize. So for this challenge, every single day I was going to spend 30 minutes reading one of those. I was also going to spend 30 minutes reading a backlist book, which for me just means a book that is on my bookshelf that is not like one of the newest books that I have put there. And then also 30 minutes of some kind of movement. For me, I really wanted these to be 30 consecutive minutes. Instead of being able to break it up over the day, I just wanted to have like 30 minutes of moving every single day for 75 days. And you know what, team? I did it. I did it. And the only way that I could have done it, like I had first of all, so much support from my partner Connor throughout this whole experience, but I also had put together a little support group over on Discord of a couple of my friends who also wanted to try this challenge, and that was an amazing space where we could just like cheer each other on and talk about some of the struggles and also just hang out and vibe, and that was really amazing. I'm so glad that I had that, and I am so glad that I like have those friends now. It's been fantastic. So those are the parameters. I've got the Discord group. I'm ready to go. The only other thing worth mentioning before we dive into what happened is just to say that my strategy for picking my books was simply that I was aiming to read my ARCs basically in publication order, and my backlist books, I was aiming to read the older books on my TBR, but I also wanted to give myself space to read some of the not quite as old ones, because those ones are generally very intimidating, so I just thought I would have a better success rate if I didn't go too strict with that one. And also I wanted to be doing something other than a walk at least 3 times a week for my movement, because I do love a walk, but I really wanted to use this challenge as a chance for me to kind of break out of that and try some new stuff. So those are the parameters. That was the plan. So let's talk about it. We're gonna go through this 25 days at a time. So for my first 25 days, I was traveling for about 2 weeks. I spent with my parents in my hometown, and that was great, but it definitely threw a wrench in my routine, and I knew it was gonna do that, so I tried to really be prepared and have a kind of an easygoing attitude about it, but it definitely proved to be a challenge. And there were many days on that trip where I was finishing my readings at like 11:55 that night. I had done both of them back to back, already in bed, and I was scraping my movement together on a lot of days, just because I was busy. But I did still accomplish it. For those first 25 days, I didn't miss a day. Some of my movement days, I stretched a little bit. Like I said, so much was going on while I was at home, so it was like if I spent 45 minutes running around the grocery store, like that's my movement. It's not ideal for that to be my movement for the day, grocery shopping, but I was definitely open and willing to count whatever I had to in this scenario. One kind of disappointing aspect of this was just that I really didn't get any other reading done. I was worried about that at the beginning of the challenge. I was just really feeling so unsure about how much other reading I would get done if I had to read for an hour these set books. How was I going to find time for other reading? And I remember I had gotten some holds in from my library that I was really excited about, but I was nervous to start them because I knew that it was gonna be kind of a challenge to to enjoy those when I already had to read 2 other books every single day. So that proved to be honestly a trend throughout this whole thing. It was really hard for me to get other reading done, but yeah, first 25 days, did the challenge. For some stats, at the beginning of this challenge, my ARC, my NetGalley like ratio was at 47%. So that meant that I had given feedback on 47% of the books that I was approved for. And by the end, it was at 61%. In this first 25 days, I read 4 books and I DNF'd 2 books. The total pages of ARCs that I read was 586, which averaged to 23.4 pages per day. My total backlist pages was 683, which averaged to 27.3 pages per day. My total pages for this whole 25 days was 1,269, which averaged to 50.7 pages every day. And that is pretty average for me. I think my reading speed tends to be around 50 pages an hour. And then as far as my movement, I walked for 14 out of 25 days, which put me at 56%. My 3 days a week non-walking goal maths out to mean that I was aiming to have a max 57% walks. So hit that goal. I had 7 days where I did yoga, did a lot of yoga while I was at home with my mom, and then 8 days where I did something else. I did some hiking and I did some like home YouTube workout videos. So that is what happened in my first 25 days of the 75 Hard. And let's move on now to the second 25 days. From day 26 to 50. This segment of the challenge was easier in some ways and harder than others. I definitely found myself falling more into the pattern of like waking up and reading for 30 minutes one of my books and generally saving the other one for that evening before bed. A triumph for this section of the challenge was that it was the Squash That Series readathon, and I did pick one book that fit my backlist category that I wanted to read for Squash That Series, so I was able to make my readathon part of my challenge at least a little bit, which really helped, and I did get a lot of other reading done in these 25 days as well because of that challenge. Another observation about my movement is that I didn't do any yoga in this whole 25 days. I was really taking the easy way out, which for me is taking a walk or a run even. Just something that like I don't have to find a video for it. I don't have to clear space and roll out my mat. Like I just put on my sneakers and I go. So that was just like, that was where the least resistance was coming from. But I definitely missed having that variety and having done so much yoga before that. The other thing is that I have been DNFing a lot in this challenge, and part of me was wondering whether that was because of the challenge. Like some of those books I'm DNFing, maybe I would have actually finished them if I had had more time and space. Like I might have spent 3 months reading a book, but finished it and enjoyed it, but having to go to that book every single day for 30 minutes, like I was just getting sick of it. I was like, I don't want to read this. I don't like you guys. I don't want to be here. And so then I was like, just never mind, like DNF, we're done. And I don't know if it's good or bad really that I was doing that. It doesn't necessarily have to be either, but it was something that I thought was interesting, is that this like challenge really didn't mesh with my usual reading style. And so I think that affected how many books I finished. The stats for this round, we left off with my NetGalley approval ratio being 61%, and by the end of this it was 70%. I read 4 more books during this 25 days, and let me be clear that I was reading outside of the 30 minutes. Like for some of these books, like I didn't read 4 total books like within 1 hour a day. Does that make sense? Like I said, I had 1 DNF in this segment. My total ARC pages this time around were 768, which averaged to 31 pages per day, and my total backlist pages were 610, and that averages it to 24.4 pages per day, and that is lower than my average for the first segment. And then the total amount of pages that I read in these 25 days is 1,378 pages, so I'm averaging 55 pages per day, which is slightly higher than the first 25 days. And my movement, I walked for 13 out of 25 days, so that was 52%, which is still within my goal of doing something else at least 3 days a week. I did 10 days of like a workout, like a workout video or a run, something more intense than a walk. And then for 2 days, I did something else. I kayaked and I had a cleaning frenzy. Those were the other 2 days. So still keeping with my not walks every day, but a lot less variety there. And now for the final 25 days of this challenge, days 51 to 75. This was in some ways even easier and in some ways a lot harder. My morning reading definitely still feeling like a habit at this point, and it's something that I'm grateful to have cultivated because that's a habit that I've wanted to have for a long time, is to just like wake up and spend the first 20-30 minutes of my day reading before I get out of bed, because I'm already gonna just like hang out in bed for half an hour after I wake up before I like do anything, so I might as well be reading. My movement, I was just I was letting this kind of fall to the back burner a lot, and so for that reason there are a ton of walks in these days, because there were so many days where I was like, I just like didn't have the mental bandwidth to like organize myself to do anything other than just like take a walk. And I also find that 30 minutes of walking, I go by myself, not all the time, but a lot of the time, and I just use that as like processing, thinking time, and that has been really helpful for me in the last like year to be taking those little walks by myself. So a lot of walks because I was just thinking a lot about a lot of things, I guess. I did have one day in this final stretch where I didn't do either of my readings, and it was just a really bad day for me. There were some things going on that weren't necessarily fully in my control. So basically, Connor gave me permission to count it as success if I were just to complete those 2 readings the next day. Like if I made up for it the very next day, we could pretend like it never happened. We could just keep moving. We could still count it as a win. So yeah, technically there was one day here where I did not complete all of my readings, but I made up for them the very next day. I didn't drag it out. Yeah, honestly, I really needed that. I needed the permission from Connor, frankly, to count it, and I needed to count it because it was rough. And I was already, like, because it was such a bad day, I was already kind of discouraged about stuff. So feeling like I failed my challenge would have just like made the whole thing worse. So yeah, I did miss a day technically, but in spirit I succeeded. And yeah, I succeeded. I finished. So the final stats for my final 25 days, my starting arc approval ratio for this segment was 70%, and in the middle of this 25 days I did get approved for 3 more arcs, so my final ending percentage is 72%. The total books that I read, or the total books that like I finished within this segment, was 3, and I DNF'd 1 book. In total, I read 795 pages of arcs, which was 31.8 pages per day, about the same as before. And I read 419 total pages of my backlist book, which averaged to 16.8 pages per day, which is really low, but I started a really dense nonfiction book, like kind of at the beginning of this. So that really slowed me down as far as the numbers went, but I made a lot of progress in that book that I have been avoiding for a long time. So anyway, my total pages read for these 25 days were 1,215, and that makes my average 48.6 pages per day. And my movement, I took 16 walks, which pushes me above my 3 days of non-walks per week threshold a little bit, but that's fine. I did 3 days of workouts and 5 days of yoga. One of the goals that I actually had just set in my head was to do some yoga. I wanted to do at least 3 days of yoga in this 25 days, and instead I did 5, so that's amazing. Love that for me. And then one day I went on a hike. So that's the full roundup. I guess I can give you some of my totals now. In total, I read 2,131 pages of arcs, 28.4 pages a day, 1,712 pages of backlist titles, averaging 22.8 pages per day, and my total pages read overall was 3,862, averaging to 51.5 pages per day. So for 75 straight days, I read 51.5 pages an hour. And I read 11 books. And my walking percentage was 57%, which is the maximum percentage that I could have to keep with my 3 days of not walking per week. So that's a success. I barely did it, but I did it. I did my 75 hard reading challenge. I am in shock. I can't believe it. And so my reward, the reward I had initially planned on giving myself was that for every day I completed all 3 parts of my challenge, I would get $1. And then like if I missed a day, I would just not get the $1 for that day. So then at the end I might have $75 or I might have less, but then I could just spend that money on like a treat. But when I was telling Connor, my partner, about this challenge, they upped the ante and said that if I did all 75 days without missing one, they would add a $25 bonus and just give me $100. So that upped the stakes, and that's also kind of why Connor gave me permission to count that one day that I maybe shouldn't have counted, because they were setting the reward parameters in this case. And you know what? I did it, and I got my $100, and I already have a lot of plans on what I'm gonna buy with it. I was thinking I was gonna spend it on books, but now I'm thinking I'm gonna spend it on, at least in part, my bullet journal for next year, my planner. So I've got plans in the works for setting that up, and I'm really excited about it. But yeah, I'm just really proud of myself for completing this challenge. This is like, I don't know, this was a milestone for me. I have failed so many like 30-day challenges, never completed a single one of them, I don't think, but I did this. So my parting thoughts and advice are just that this was great. I do recommend you do this if you are even a little bit interested, because yeah, it was great. It was really hard, but it pushed me to make so much progress in different areas, and yeah, I'm feeling good about it. I do think that it is essential to have that support group, so I'm so grateful to my little Discord buddies for just being there for me. And yeah, I recommend you get a couple of buddies if you're gonna try this yourself. And then finally, there's no best time to do this. Like, if you want to do it, you just have to do it, because there's no group of 75 days that like there's nothing going on where you're not going to be super busy for some weeks or traveling or whatever, you know, like you're always going to have some obstacles. So you just have to like start and try to make it work. Just try your best. I don't know. That's my experience doing the 75 hard reading challenge. Again, that was created by Alyssa from Nerdy Nurse Reads, and her video is linked down below. I think she created this like about a year ago. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that this was interesting in some way. At least it was interesting for me to kind of put it all together. So that's kind of what counts, you know what I mean? Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad you were here. I'm glad you joined me. I appreciate every single like, comment, and subscribe.
Who is that? Hello?